Oklahoma farmer says, I think we're about to enter the Dust Bowl, the same as about the same or worse. Our food prices are not just going up because our leaders pumped way too much money into the system, Michael Snyder reports. All over the world, crops are failing, and that includes right here in the United States. Earlier this year, CNN warned that we are in the midst of the worst food crisis in modern history, and so we really need this to be an extremely successful year for our farmers. Unfortunately, that just is not happening in much of the country. In fact, one wheat farmer in Oklahoma said that his farm is experiencing the worst severe drought I've ever seen, he said. Looks can be deceiving. Rolling wheat fields may appear green and lively to passing drivers, but the farmers who planted the fields see a different story playing out as their crops die off and blow away. We had less than half a crop last year, and we're probably going to have half of that this year. It's terrible, said 75-year-old Burlington farmer Keith Kisling. He said, we're in the most severe drought I've ever seen. Another Oklahoma farmer, 23-year-old Jacob Webster, is actually comparing current conditions to the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Jacob Webster, a 23-year-old farmer near Deer Creek in Grant County, spent a recent Sunday evening surveying his wheat fields in north-central Oklahoma. His leather cowboy boots were taller than much of the wheat, some of which is yellowing. He's never seen a worse crop, he said. The good thing is today we've got insurance, but the insurance does not pay as well as a wheat crop could make, Webster said. With last year not being a very good wheat crop, and this year probably not going to be the best, I would expect some people will probably have to fold up. It's going to be tough. I think we're to the Dust Bowl about the same or worse, he said. We have been warned for a long time that Dust Bowl conditions would return to the center of the nation, and now it has happened. Of course, farmers in the U.S. are not the only ones that are dealing with extreme drought. In Spain, endless drought has severely damaged more than 3.5 million hectares of crops. Southern Europe's farmers are facing a crop crisis. Months of drought has interrupted the year's harvest, and some Spanish ecologists are warning the country may soon be unable to sustain cereal crops such as wheat and barley. Irreversible damage has been done to more than 3.5 million hectares of crops. The main Spanish Farmers Association, COAG, warns, sounding the alarm on a trend it says is being observed throughout much of the country. Crops are failing all over the planet right now, and this comes at a time when global food supplies have just been getting tighter and tighter. As a result, hunger is on the rise. In fact, last year, the number of people facing acute hunger increased to more than 250 million. The Global Report on Food Crisis, GRFC, for 2023 highlights that the number of people experiencing acute food insecurity and requiring urgent food and livelihood assistance is on the rise. The report indicates that over 250 million people are facing acute hunger, with economic shocks and the Ukraine war contributing to the increase. In 2022, around 258 million people across 58 countries and territories faced acute food insecurity at crisis or worse level, up from 193 million people in 53 countries and territories in 2021. If you still have plenty of food to eat, that is wonderful. Others are not so fortunate. As you read this article, there are 45 million precious souls around the world that meet the technical definition of being on the brink of starvation. Conditions are particularly bad in Africa. In West Africa, it's being projected that there will be 48 million people without regular access to safe and nutritious food this summer. West and Central Africa has faced increasing risks caused by higher temperatures and erratic rainfall. War in Ukraine has contributed to food and fertilizer shortages in one of the world's poorest regions. The number of people without regular access to safe and nutritious food is projected to hit 48 million during the June-August lean season, according to a regional food security analysis presented by the UN World Food Programme, humanitarian agency OCHA, Food and Agriculture Organization FAO, and Children's Agency UNICEF. In East Africa, the worst drought in 40 years is causing an unprecedented crisis across the entire region. East Africa's worst drought in 40 years has forced millions of Somalis to leave their homes. 5 consecutive failed rainy seasons pushed the fragile nation to the brink of famine, and this year is unlikely to be much different. Last year, when I warned that a horrific global food crisis was on the way, I was not just blowing smoke. In the time that it took you to read the article, more people dropped from starvation, and way too often it is children that are perishing. Sadly, most Americans are not going to care about the emerging global famine until it affects them personally. Of course, it has already affected them personally, but they just don't realize it yet. One of the primary reasons why you have to pay $300 for a cart of food at the grocery store is because global food supplies are much tighter than they once were. In the early stages of this crisis, there is not going to be starvation in the Western world like we are seeing in other areas of the planet, but eventually there will be very serious shortages of food here too. Are you prepared for that day to arrive? I hope so, because the clock is ticking. And this is by Michael Snyder. He says about the author, "My name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, Commissions Earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I have also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so that you won't miss any of the latest updates. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge that you invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is on End of the American Dream by Michael Snyder. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.